This windshield wiper is driving me absolutely insane right now. Look what it's doing. That's safe. It doesn't show up on the photo mode, of course, but it just seems absolute. Ooh, yeah, look at that quality. Let's change it back to 640 by 40. That just looks ridiculous. Good day, folks. Jordan here. And, well, the previous scene, I kind of overemphasized the fact of it being dangerous, but trust me, don't drive your motor vehicle with a bad set of windshield wipers when it's raining almost that bad outside. You're not going to have a good time. But I digress. Today's video is not on vehicles in particular. Of course, it's going to be on one of my more popular topics of my channel, computers. Specifically, an HP Elitebook. So let's dig right in. What we have here is an HP Elitebook 2540p from 2011. Now, in the Hackintosh space, you could basically call this an early 2011 13-inch MacBook Pro in terms of the specifications. Although, I don't know if these ever would have came with the kind of processor that this one has in particular, but it's very close indeed. To give a size comparison as to how small this actually is, here is my MacBook 13-inch, mid-2010 of course, next to the Elitebook. You can basically see that the MacBook almost dwarfs the Elitebook in size. It's obviously a little wider to accommodate a wider display, because it's obviously a little bigger than the Elitebook, but, you know, why not make that little comparison? But also, if we compare the Elitebook to my up-and-coming tablet review of my Windows 10 tablet, which there you can see, ta-da, you know, it works, a nice glitch there. You can tell, obviously, it's a very small laptop computer. This is an 8-inch tablet, by the way. So this thing is very portable and very small for that regard. And, well, that's an issue I'm about to describe here in just a moment, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. And what better way to start off an overview video than to talk about the I/O? Here we have a gigabit Ethernet port. And here's an oddity. There is a T9 Torx screw right there. And there's 6 of them on the exterior of the laptop. There's one there. And there is one right there next to these 2 USB ports. And I don't know why HP decided to go about that route. I guess so that way people would not crack into your laptop as easily. But those are standard T9 Torx screws, so I mean, they're in everybody's toolbox, so it's just kind of benign. I don't know why, but there is a mix of T9 and Phillips screws on the bottom of this laptop, so I'm not entirely sure why they did that, but that's how it was done. On the left-hand side, we have your power in, and we also have a dummy part for a modem, which that's just a rubber block. Kind of interesting that this actually has a knockout and it doesn't actually have the modem installed, so that's something interesting. I don't know what kind of add-on card would go on the bottom of which it would give you modem functionality, or if it was just a straight-up USB modem that was just connected via internal USB. Speaking of USB, we have 2 more USB ports. Not quite sure what this little locking tab would have been for, maybe for a docking station or something to plug into that, although you'll soon see why that's kind of redundant in a minute. Right here, at first kind of threw me off because I thought that there would be like room for some kind of multi-bay device that just ran off the SATA bus, but then you wouldn't have a hard drive. Yeah, the hard drive mounts right there. Kind of interesting. It comes out on a little sled here, and it screws into the bottom of these 4 screws, and it's also held in by that screw there, and I think there's another screw underneath something. I don't remember. I think it was underneath this big little cover there, and then you can take this whole entire sled out, which has the interface connector on it, which is just strange. On the front of the laptop, we have 4 indicator LEDs for your wireless, your power, your charging status or AC adapter status, as well as your hard disk drive access LED. And right there is your single speaker. And I'm not entirely sure what this is for. I'm not sure if this is some kind of front-mounted antenna or what the thing is, but there's nothing behind this other than a little circuit board with what looks to be an antenna connector, so I'm not quite sure what this is for. If it would be for cellular antenna capabilities and it's just in there but it's not actually used on this particular unit, I'm not sure. But it's there nonetheless. one of the many vehicles that drives past our house with no exhaust on it, or very little exhaust on it. I digress on that last little bit there. It just seems to happen all the time. Anyway, here we have an Express Card 54 slot with its blinking plate still put in place. We have an SD card slot, Firewire 400, which is really nice to see on a first-gen Core i-Series laptop, which this is. Although it's not to say that the 13-inch MacBook Pro didn't have backwards compatibility with this through the Thunderbolt ports, and you can still technically do that today if you had a lot of adapters, but who would want to go through the trouble of that unless, of course, they've been buying them over time to adapt? I don't know. Whoever has done it would be committed. We have a single headset jack, which I'm not a big fan of because you need a splitter to get headphone and microphone jacks as standalone jacks, which I'm not sure why they're doing this nowadays or why they did it back then at least. VGA port with the screws, which is quite nice to see. We have a display port. I believe that's just DisplayPort 1 point something. I'm not sure what revision it is. We have your cooling vent, which is, not large at first, but it's quite the large cooling vent. And we also have some kind of HP proprietary expansion port, presumably for a USB docking station interface of some kind right here. Not quite sure what kind of interface it uses, if it's proprietary, if it's just USB, but interfaced quite differently to supply extra power and interfacing capabilities to different devices on the same docking station. That could possibly be. And finally, a Kensington security lock slot. There's not too much interesting on the bottom of this particular HP Elitebook. You do get a little battery gauge on these HP batteries to let you know what the status is. And you also get these nice access plates. And this one's specifically for your Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and cellular data cards. And this one is for your memory. I think your CMOS batteries underneath here as well. And it also gives you extra access to your cooling vent, as well as some extra screws to take off the keyboard. One of the RAM slots is underneath this. The other RAM slot is underneath the keyboard and all the secure stuff that this machine actually has. Now, usually this would be where your Windows 7 Pro license would go, but it's not on this one because it's probably been taken off due to the organization that this might have belonged to, who kept the license. Here you can see HP Elitebook 2540p. This would have had a 1-year warranty on it when it was new. And I actually also got this with a 9-cell extended battery, but it's actually got some damage to the connector. Now, I'll show you what I mean here if I can get it out one-handed here on this particular battery. I know I took note of this in the Discord group of mine, and this is going to be the exact same sort of thing here that I'm going to reference. But on the extended battery in particular, there's these little plastic insulator pieces that protect the pins from shorting out against one another. And on my particular extended capacity battery pack, there are 4 of these little plastic things missing, one of the big ones especially. And it's not that it prevents the battery from working, but one minor jolt and it will short the pins and shut the laptop down. So it's quite the annoying little thing, but you get used to it. I just use it with the standard battery because it works about the same, so it's no difference there. And most of the time when I want to use this thing, I have it plugged in anyway, so it's no real big deal. Now, this is an HP Elitebook, of course, obviously, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. So it has a higher than normal standard of build quality, although you would expect that on a business class laptop such as this, the Lenovo ThinkPad, the Dell Latitude series, which I forgot to grab my D620, oops, I digress. But this thing is very well made, and it has an aluminum top to cover the LCD, and it has this little insulating bit made of plastic to allow all the Wi-Fi antennas to go through the top. And you get this metal lid catch, or I guess it's metal. It's probably just plastic with a chrome covering on it. One particular downfall of this unit in particular is the little plunger. Now this plunger is what is used to hold down the little pin, which is used to secure the display when you go to close it. That little chrome plated thing right there that's right in the middle of your video. And that plugs in there. Now this plunger works for the most part, but I'm not sure if it's just been excessively worn and doesn't quite hold the screen, because it will latch and securely at that, but sometimes you're going to do something and it just pops open at complete random.
So I'm not quite sure if I can get it to pop up on video here, but sometimes I've just gotten it to pop open at the most obscene of times. And I don't think it's going to do it, but I'm pretty sure you'll know what a non-functioning wood catch is because it's going to pop open like that.
And these are some extremely stiff hinges. Now, they're not so stiff to the point where you can't actually open the display up with one hand, but they're rather stiff, so, you know, once they're in place, like, they are in place. Like, they cannot move real easily, which is a good thing and a bad thing, but more good than bad, of course. This particular Elitebook does have the optional 640 by 480 resolution, in theory, webcam. On HP's website, they call this a 2 megapixel webcam, but I'm really not sure what I'm supposed to believe on that, because in Windows it only shows up as a 640 by 480 webcam, so I'm not sure where their 2 megapixel claim was for, other than maybe their proprietary software. Either way, you do get a little access LED to let you know when you're using the webcam. And speaking of LEDs, you do get a keyboard LED. Since this does not have a backlit keyboard, just like their Lenovo ThinkPad counterparts, you can, in this case, pop out this little LED light, of which will shine bright enough, but not too bright, to light the keyboard up, of which you can actually see what you're typing. Of course, on the Lenovo machines, they did it through a key combination, and then eventually they got backlit keyboards. And there is your post, which clicks into the plunger, which keeps the display closed. And rather unsurprisingly, there's little rubber bits missing off the display. Actually, that's the only one. But there would normally be rubber bits that are around this that, you know, keep it from coming in contact with the keyboard. There's even some of its own, and prevents it from making marks on the screen, which this is a matte display, by the way. And I believe this is like a 12-point-something inch non-LED backlit display, matte texture, 1280 by 800 in resolution. So it's a good display, but let me tell you, it's not nearly as good as the display on even my mid-2010 MacBook. The display on this thing is just so much worse compared to the MacBook. But it's not to say that it's a bad display, don't get me wrong. It gets decently bright and whatnot, but the colors are quite muted and there's no contrast, and at least it doesn't have uneven backlighting for the most part, which is a common flaw of non-LED backlit displays that get old over time, of course. One thing that is interesting, and this is actually shared between the MacBook Pro and the Dell Latitude line, is an auto brightness sensor, which sits right here. And this one I'm not sure if it's actually functioning or not. I would assume that it does because I do have the software installed, but it could be a Windows 10 incompatibility. I'm really not sure. So maybe when I do a future experiment with this laptop, we'll actually give that automatic brightness sensor a go and see if it actually works. Now, one thing I'm also not sure about is if these little pinholes are microphones, because they just kind of sit there. And at the moment, I don't have any microphone capability with this computer, which is just strange. And I swear, I try to clean these things as best I can before any kind of video gets made on them, and they just get dirty again. Go figure. Anyway, there's the power button. There's a quick launch button for some kind of task scheduler thing. There's a quick access button for the internet browser. There is a Wi-Fi toggle switch in software, because it does not have a hardware Wi-Fi switch, which is a good thing for some people. Touchpad disable button. Some kind of numlock, caps lock, and scroll lock light area up here, and then your volume controls. Also, I don't know what this pink stuff is. I'm pretty sure it's something like, I don't know. I can't get it out, so it's kind of stuck in there at the moment. And that brings me to the keyboard of this laptop, and again, I thought I cleaned this, but I guess it just doesn't show. I guess I just got greasy hands or something. I don't know. Anyway, I digress. This keyboard, I swear to God, is one of the best laptop keyboards I have typed on. Of course, bar none to the MacBook, of course, which I typed a hell of a lot on that thing when I used it as my main laptop, which I still do. But this thing comes very close second place.
Or third place, depending on if you use a Lenovo ThinkPad with a real ThinkPad keyboard, or if you use this, or if you use a MacBook or MacBook Pro or something, or even if you were to use a Dell Latitude, which comes fourth place for me.
But anyway, this comes a close second to MacBook keyboards, because I don't know if this is just reinforced or something, but there's a nice tactile response to the keys, and it feels like, I swear, it's like reinforced with a metal backplate or something that's just stiffer than usual, that you can just slam on the keys and it just doesn't care. Like, you can just get to town on typing on this keyboard and it'll keep up. Like, I'm really impressed with this keyboard. And I've been typing a lot on it recently, and it's actually been holding up really well. Now, this unit, I'm not sure where it came from in a previous life before even the last owner who had this got it before I got it from him. But there's not too much wear on the keyboard. It's actually not too bad. I mean, this is definitely showing some signs of normal use throughout this laptop's life, so it's not too bad. The only thing is missing is the page down key, but really it's nothing. I don't really use page down key on a laptop that often anyway. And if I'm really cost concerned about trying to find a key, I'm just going to replace the whole freaking keyboard because, they're cheap. So if I'm too concerned about the key, I'll just replace the whole keyboard. They're like, what, 10, 20 bucks on eBay? Really, they're not too bad. Which also includes the eraser head mouse and the buttons too, which these are actually rubber coated buttons, which is nice. So they're actually quiet click buttons, and they're nice and precise. This AcuPoint mouse is really precise, or AcuPoint, I'm not sure what the trademark term is, I just call it eraser head mouse, but anyway, it's actually very precise, and it actually works really well. In fact, I sometimes like it over the touchpad because the touchpad does not have any multi-touch support, unlike the MacBook. Even my MacBook over there has more multi-touch gestures than this one does, which is no surprise because, of course, this was before Windows touchpads ever really cared about multi-touch gestures. That didn't happen until like a year later or something, or if you had a specialized machine with specialized drivers. But the touchpad's not too bad. You can tell where the mouse button got used a little bit. The coating's kind of coming off, but it's still there for, a little bit. But these are rubber-coated. All these are rubber-coated, so, they don't last too particularly long with heavy use because it's rubber and it degrades quickly. But overall, other than missing the Intel Core i5 sticker and an Energy Star sticker, this machine, well, and for the fact of the matter, the freaking page down key, it's not too bad. It's actually fairly well maintained. Not nearly as good of shape as my Panasonic Toughbook, but it's pretty good nonetheless. Now, since this machine has a good battery in it, we're going to go ahead and power it on from the battery. It just takes a second to come on. And we'll go ahead and pop into the BIOS here, although I suppose we'd probably just use the system information when you press F1. I have updated the BIOS on this machine to the latest BIOS, which is F.60, which this machine obviously happily accepted no problem, which that BIOS was released in November 2015, so not too far off. This machine is well maintained, and in fact, if I had a slightly newer model, I'm pretty sure I could still get updates for it. So not bad, HP. You did a pretty good job on supporting this, but mini rants, of course, people know that I kind of get on a mini rant about HP support system because, of course, they well maintain a lot of their products. And in many cases, you can find driver support for machines dating all the way back to the 1990s, but it's very inconsistent because usually you really only find the business models that are getting supported more than the consumer models because HP, for whatever reason, a year or two ago, and I think it was actually a couple of years ago, they started phasing out support for some of their older products, mainly in the consumer division, and it's so dumb that you can't go and find drivers now, especially for my HP Pavilion A250N, my A1477C, another model would be the A1712N. My compact Presario 6708 is also in the list, which is annoying. Some of my other HP Pavilion 6000 and compact Presario 5000 series systems, they don't have driver support. It's just inconsistent. I don't know why HP went down that route. But for the business grade machines, especially this one in particular, which there is a funny surprise, it's not too bad, actually. They're pretty nice. So anyway, what do we got here for CPU? We get a Core i5 M560 running at 2.67 gigahertz, although it's actually 2.66 gigahertz. Dual core hyper-threaded CPU. We got 6 gigabytes of RAM. I believe this machine would have shipped new with 4 gigabytes, but the original owner or whoever got this before I got it or whenever upgraded it from 4 gigs to 6 gigs, so not a bad upgrade. Really does help out with the longevity of the system. Let's take a look at the Let's take a look at the BIOS, because the BIOS is actually decent on these machines. As you can see, it's graphical in nature, and you can control it with the eraser head mouse or the touchpad, or if you had external peripherals, you could use those. So it's very nice. It works really well. It's very intuitive, and this is basically the same page as earlier in case you wanted to look at it again. So anyway, there's not too much to really take a look at. I don't have the HP, well, we'll go back in that menu real quick so I can show you what I'm talking about. I do not have the HP spare key software installed. Neither do I have Intel CIRA or CIRA enabled. I don't know what the purpose of CIRA would actually be, but I don't have the spare key software installed. I could if I wanted to, but I didn't feel a need to because I don't think I'm going to use this in an organization setting, so I didn't really think I needed that. So anyway, let's go ahead and continue booting up here. And this machine, I upgraded the hard drive because when I got it, it had a 160 gig hard drive, and I think I packed it away someplace already. But anyway, I upgraded it to a 500 gigabyte hard drive, so that way I would have not only my own hard drive in here, but I would also have like 3-4 times the capacity. I don't remember what the ratio was. Anyway, doesn't matter. Probably like 3 times the capacity if I had to think about it. Anyway, so this machine runs Windows 10 very well, and it's no surprise because the CPU clock speed is rather high for a laptop, especially for something. Microsoft Office Sync.exe. Nice. Good job. Corruption already. Typical Windows. Anyway, my digressions aside, you can already tell this screen is glare happy. There is no such thing as anti-glare coatings on this display whatsoever, so I have to tilt it like this to get a good demonstration of this machine, so my apologies if something looks off. But back to the topic at hand. Like I said, this machine runs Windows 10 quite well. I mean, it's not going to beat a desktop like my HP XW6600 in terms of raw CPU power. My XW6600 would hands down beat this thing 3 times over in terms of raw CPU power with its dual CPUs. But let me minimize my Discord real quick because it's going to come up and I'll just do it on this TV. But this machine feels responsive. Like, it's very responsive. Even with all my junk installed, it's very nice to use. Of course, this is just a fast start, so it hasn't fully started up yet, so things are going to definitely stutter, but what do you expect? For a laptop running a hard drive, I mean, obviously it's not going to be as responsive as my Windows tablet, which, again, a spoiler for a video coming soon, which I'm typing the review notes up for, and that'll probably be for a separate video, but anyway. So, let's see. Yes, I do have Antutu on this laptop. I don't think I'm going to run it in this video. It just seems kind of pointless. Although I am going to look at that Microsoft Office sync after this video, because I'm not sure why that error message came up. That's quite odd. But anyway, this does have the factory installed Bluetooth, and this does have HD graphics installed, although they're only HD graphics 2000 on this laptop. And the reason why is because this machine was physically too small to accommodate a dedicated GPU. The slightly faster models, or the newer models, could accommodate a Radeon GPU inside of the machine alongside a Sandy Bridge Core i-Series processor, and those machines are rather nice. I would like to get my hands on one of those, but for right now, I have my first gen Core i5 machine, and it works rather well. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into Device Manager, and let's take a look at some of the hardware inside of this machine. If maybe I could learn to type in the command for Device Manager properly. I'm glad that you all are watching in the comments section and making sure to remind me that I typed in Device Manager wrong. You're welcome. I always make sure everybody's watching the video. Anyway, in terms of audio inputs and outputs, we have that dumb sort of thing, that one jack, but that one jack actually has a multitude of functions on it, which is quite nice. And I do have the proper audio driver installed, which does allow me to do all that sort of stuff, which is just awesome if you have the right adapters. I think the port replicators or docking stations could have additional batteries in them. That's why that batteries section is there. I'm really not sure why it's there otherwise. Validity sensor for biometric, because this machine has a validity fingerprint scanner on this laptop. Let me see here. It's kind of interesting because it kind of sits in the background. It's not Windows Hello compatible, which is kind of strange because this has a fingerprint sensor, but it's not used for unlocking Windows like a Lenovo ThinkPad's fingerprint sensor is normally used for. Basically, what you do is when you're inside of a website, you scan your finger, it then makes a noise and shows that logo, and depending on what accounts you have set up inside of HP Protect Tools, it will let you actually log in to websites just using your fingerprint, just like what the Lenovo ThinkPads actually do. And as a matter of fact, actually, this machine only has software designed for Windows 7, but it blends in very well with the Windows 10 interface. Like, not bad, HP. Like, good job at keeping the interface consistency. Either that or it's a newer version that's been designed to work with Windows 10, which I don't think that's the case because this machine only has drivers for Windows 7 at its highest. We got a Microsoft Bluetooth driver because I never did install the Bluetooth on this laptop, although it wouldn't really be that hard to do it because I do have that downloaded already. See, this is where they call it the 2 megapixel macro HP webcam, although in Windows it only recognizes as a 640 by 480, but we'll take a look at that in a minute. Maybe I'll be proven wrong because it might have snuck up a driver behind my back. I don't know. Intel HD graphics. It doesn't say what model because this is the very first generation of it. I have installed, if I can get there, the proper AHCI controller driver on this machine, so maybe that's why Windows 10 runs so quickly, is because it has proper drivers for the hard drive. Obviously, this has a Ricoh FireWire controller and card reader. Let's take a look at the network adapters, because that's quite interesting. So this has Intel Gigabit and Intel Centrino wireless, but it does not have the cellular adapter installed. But it does have the SIM card slot underneath the battery, despite that. Now, it's called a PCM-CIA adapter. I'm not sure why, but it's not a PCM-CIA slot, although maybe on like I said, a docking station, it could have had that feature. But, of course, I don't know that for sure. Security devices. It has a trusted platform module, which I have not set up because I don't think I need to. It thinks it has a smart card reader, but this laptop does not have a smart card slot on it. GS wavetables. I'm surprised that that's still in Windows today, but it makes sense. Backwards compatibility. Here you can see IDT high-definition audio codec and some storage spaces, and this has, again, Intel 5 series chipset. So, not too much in the way of interesting hardware. It's all basically Intel at this point. What can we demonstrate? Oh yeah, we got Paint.net on here, so we can go ahead and launch Paint.net. There was actually a sale going on in the Microsoft Store, which that's now what it's called with the new logo. I almost called it Windows Store, but that technically wouldn't be correct anymore. But they had Paint.net, which is the software I use to make my thumbnails, on sale for $5, and so I picked it up because I absolutely love this software, and I actually really wanted to donate to the developers, so I guess I'm giving in, and I paid the $5 sale price for Paint.net's entrance onto the Microsoft Store, and it's literally the exact same program, which is really nice because I can just install it from the Windows Store, and there you go. I've actually been really finding a lot of good stuff on the Microsoft Store recently, hence the tablet. And this was actually in the store, and I didn't know that it was in the store, as a matter of fact. So that was kind of interesting. But anyway, I can, if I wanted to, I could go 1920 by 1080, and I could make thumbnails on this. Just come over here to the gradient button. We'll hit like blue as one of the colors, maybe red. We'll make a really trippy one here. Just do a really trippy gradient. You can tell hardware acceleration is on, but the GPU doesn't have much to provide in terms of graphical editing because you can tell all the artifacting. But in a pinch, it would work just fine for that sort of use of making thumbnails. So that's always nice. I got a real nice glare on my phone screen, so I can't see what I'm recording, so I'm going to see if I can do that. The screen on the camera looks brighter than it does in real life, which is rather interesting. There's not really much to show because I don't have many games installed on this due to the limited graphics, but I will show off the webcam just because why not? Does that indicator LED actually work? I cannot tell. I can't get it dark enough to where I can actually see it, but I think it is on. Yep. There's a faint blue glow of the webcam light being on. Anyway, here's this idiot's face. Let's see what resolution it's at. I think, again, it's at 640 by 480. Yep. You can see 640 by 480. And interestingly enough, you can go 176 by 144 on the video, which just, it doesn't show up on the photo mode, of course, but it just seems absolute. Ooh, yeah, look at that quality. Let's change it back to 640 by 480. That just looks ridiculous. I just had to try that anyway, just because, why not? The webcam itself actually has a pretty decent light sensitivity to it, and actually, for the sake of the video, I guess we'll take a picture, and that'll be included inside of the video, of course. I remember when this app was so bad that no matter what you used, what hardware, what software, you just couldn't take a picture because it would just give you a hexadecimal error and close. At least that was the case with my grandma's computer. I don't know why it was so buggy, but it was. I suppose Photoshop Express would be a redundant demonstration. there's really not much to show. Oh, I do have a game installed. I do have Minecraft installed, so let's go ahead and we'll give Minecraft for Windows 10 a go. Normally, I'm not a big fan of Minecraft, but in this case, I actually use it as a sort of a benchmark or a baseline to try and test out graphics on laptops. And I have set this up prior to this video already, so that's kind of interesting. And yeah, so let's see if we can do something here. I've just made a basic creative world so that way I can demonstrate the graphics on this laptop. Unfortunately, I cannot use the built-in Xbox screen recording feature because you need Intel HD Graphics 4000 or greater. And this laptop only has HD Graphics 2000. So while it looks smooth right now, and actually I'm using the Acupoint to control this, which is kind of dinky, but you can tell it actually works really well. It takes two hands to play this game as well. It seems to play just fine. And I'm really surprised by that because you wouldn't think of HD Graphics 2000 as having much graphical capability, but then again, Minecraft isn't really that intensive of a game to begin with. Obviously, it's not going to be really impressive in terms of the frame rates, and I don't remember what the key combination was, or the function key, or whatever, to get the frame per second meter to show up on the display. But visually speaking, it's keeping a consistent, smooth frame rate that looks to be 60 frames per second, but I don't know if it's just because the view settings are at a lower setting than what they probably should be. But anyway, if I come up here, whoops, I hit the tree. Well, that's always smart. Yeah, the render distance is not as high as it probably could be. And either way, it's keeping a consistent frame rate. Obviously, if I was in survival mode, that would have just killed me. Well, you wouldn't have been floating in survival mode anyway. But as you can see, it seems to work just fine. And I guess if one person was into Minecraft, and I'm not, you could play Minecraft on this thing all day. And in fact, if you were to overload this thing with the famous stack a bunch of TNT everywhere and blow it up with flint and steel, this probably wouldn't have too big of a frame drop. I've seen it cripple a Pentium dual-core system from the same era using HD Graphics 2000 or 3000. I don't remember what it used, but either way. So I guess we can go ahead and chop up this rose bush here and whatnot. But yeah, that's Minecraft in a nutshell. It works quite well. I don't really play Minecraft, like I've said for the 1000th time, but it works well enough, and it works as a benchmark. What else can we show on this? That's pretty much it, because there's not too much that is interesting on this machine. It's just your average business class laptop that was from the late 2010 era, or late 2010 era, we're almost there at this point anyway, the early 2010 era, there we go, get it right, Jordan. And I gotta say, this makes a worthy contender to replace my old Lenovo ThinkPad T60, which is now in pieces because, of course, the display no longer turned on that machine, so I had to part it out. And I put the Intel Core 2 Duo T7200 that was in that machine, and I actually put it in my Dell Latitude D620. So expect a video coming up very soon on the D620, because we might actually use that machine to test Linux distributions on to see how well the GMA 950 GPU holds up. But in the meantime, that's it, and I appreciate you all taking the time to watch, and I will see you in the next video.